Blood splattered across the manicured lawn as the HOA riot police beat the homeless man with batons, his cry of pain drowned out by Karen Mitchell's shrill voice. "Get this filthy vagrant out of our community," she screamed. But what the power-hungry HOA president didn't realize, as her security team attacked him on my front lawn, was that this disheveled stranger wasn't just a homeless man. He secretly owned our entire city. And with one phone call, he'd bring her perfect little empire crashing down. I never thought I'd witness such violence in our peaceful suburban neighborhood, but that sunny Saturday changed everything. I was watering my petunias when I spotted them marching down the street. 6 men and women in black tactical uniforms with Lakeside HOA security patches, their face shields gleaming in the sunlight, batons swinging at their sides. They looked like an actual riot police unit, not neighborhood security. Karen Mitchell, our HOA president, led the charge. Her designer heels clicking aggressively on the pavement, her face twisted with rage as she approached an older man sitting quietly on a bench in our community park. I'd seen that rage before, directed at neighbors who painted mailboxes the wrong shade or left trash bins out too long. But this was different. This was pure hatred. And the homeless man seemed strangely calm, as if he'd been waiting for this moment, as if he knew something. We didn't. I abandoned my garden hose and rushed toward the confrontation along with several other concerned neighbors. "This is private property," Karen shouted at the man. "You can't sleep here. This is a violation of community regulations." The homeless man simply looked up at her with remarkably calm eyes. "I'm just resting, ma'am." His voice was soft, educated, not what any of us expected. He reached into his ragged jacket, pulling out a water bottle. "I'll move along in a moment." The way Karen's face contorted with rage sent chills down my spine. "You people are always trying to invade decent neighborhoods," she sneered, gesturing to her security team to surround him. "You're lowering our property values." My elderly neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, stepped forward. "Karen, this is unnecessary," she said. "The man isn't bothering anyone, he's just sitting there." But Karen was beyond reasoning. She pulled a telescoping baton from her designer purse, flicking it open with practiced ease. At the sound of the baton extending, the homeless man's eyes widened slightly, his calm demeanor shifting to cautious alert. I started recording on my phone, knowing this had crossed a line. What happened next still plays in my nightmares. The homeless man stood up, palms raised in a peaceful gesture. "I'm leaving," he said quietly, taking a step back. That's when Karen lunged forward, swinging her baton directly at his head. He managed to raise his arm, blocking the worst of the blow, but the sickening crack of metal against bone made everyone gasp. "Karen just assaulted someone," I shouted, continuing to record as several neighbors pulled out their phones too. Karen ignored us, her face flushed with a disturbing excitement. She swung again, catching the man across his shoulder as he stumbled backward. The security team stood frozen, seemingly shocked that their boss had escalated to actual violence. "This park is for residents only," she screamed. The homeless man fell backward onto the manicured grass, his worn backpack spilling open, revealing something unexpected. Neatly organized folders and what looked like legal documents. Mr. Castillo, a retired police officer, rushed forward, grabbing her arm. "That's enough," he shouted. "This is assault. Karen, you need to stop now." The security team finally moved forward, but instead of restraining Karen, they formed a protective circle around her. "She's the HOA president," one of them said nervously. "She's enforcing community standards." The homeless man was bleeding from a cut above his eye, but remained surprisingly calm. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called 911. I later learned it was Mrs. Chen, the retired nurse who lived on the corner. Karen pointed her baton at the homeless man, her voice venomous. "Mark my words, you filthy vagrant. If you ever come back to Lakeside Estates, you'll regret it." The homeless man looked her directly in the eyes. Something flickered across his face, a hint of what almost seemed like recognition. "Thank you for the warning, Ms. Mitchell," he said softly. How did he know her last name, I wondered. The police arrived, 3 cruisers pulling up to our normally quiet park. Officer Jenkins stepped out, followed by several other officers. Karen immediately shifted her demeanor, adopting a sugary sweet voice. "Officers, thank God you're here. This homeless person was threatening our residents. I was just protecting my community from dangerous vagrants." But 20 neighbors immediately contradicted her, multiple phones displaying video evidence of what really happened. Officer Jenkins looked genuinely shocked as he watched my recording. I couldn't sleep that night. Images of Karen attacking the homeless man played on repeat in my mind. Morning brought a flurry of activity. News vans lined the entrance to Lakeside. Estates, reporters eager to cover the story of an HOA president assaulting a homeless person. My phone pinged with messages from neighbors sharing videos, organizing an emergency community meeting. At the meeting, Mr. Rodriguez addressed the crowd. "I spoke with Officer Jenkins this morning. He has some information about the man Karen attacked." He paused. "The man's name is Edward Caldwell, and he's not exactly homeless." The room fell silent. Mr. Caldwell is some kind of legal consultant who specializes in property law and municipal regulations. He's been investigating something related to our community. That evening, as I was sorting through old HOA newsletters, I heard a knock. It was Emily, my law student daughter. "Mom, you need to see this." She held up her laptop open to a news article. The headline read, "Renowned property rights advocate Edward Caldwell wins landmark case against developer fraud." The accompanying photo showed a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit. It was unmistakably the same person Karen had attacked. "He's famous for going undercover to expose corruption in housing developments," Emily explained. The next morning, I found an envelope on my doorstep. The Homeowners Association is imposing an emergency special assessment. Karen's note read, "All residents must pay $5,000 within 30 days for essential infrastructure improvements." I stared in disbelief. "You were just arrested for assault and you're demanding more money." I called Mr. Castillo. "They're trying to rush the construction," I said, looking toward the site where unusually large crews were now assembling within 10 minutes. Several concerned neighbors had gathered watching as workers unloaded equipment and materials at a frantic pace. "This isn't normal." Mr. Castillo muttered, "They're working like they're racing against a deadline." Emily arrived, her law student mind immediately picking up. "They're trying to establish progress before Caldwell can legally stop them." She explained, "It's a tactic developers use." Edward Caldwell called me that afternoon. "I understand there's been an emergency assessment and accelerated construction." He said calmly, "My plan was to serve papers on Tuesday, but it appears we need to move faster. Can you meet me at the city records office in 1 hour?" At the records office, Caldwell had documents spread across a large table. I had planned a more measured approach, he explained, but Karen's actions forced my hand. He gestured to the papers. "What you're looking at is the complete ownership history of Lakeside Estates, including the original deed restrictions that were never legally modified." The most damning evidence came next. I've obtained emails between Karen Mitchell, the planning commissioner, and Mitchell Construction, showing they knew the demolition was illegal, but proceeded anyway because, and I quote, "By the time anyone realizes what happened, it will be too late to stop development." Then he revealed the most shocking truth. "Technically, I own the majority of Lakeside Estates and have for nearly 15 years through a family trust established by my grandfather." He explained, "I inherited the land through a complicated series of trusts. My family leased development rights decades ago with very specific conditions. That development remain low density, that historical structures be preserved, that 40% of the land remain undeveloped green space." His voice hardened. Those conditions have been systematically violated for years. In 3 days, I'll be serving them with legal documents that will effectively end their authority, Caldwell explained. My lawyer is already preparing the case, but Karen's desperate rush to complete construction forced our hand. We returned to the community the next morning to find Karen screaming at construction workers, her face red with fury as they explained they couldn't continue without functioning equipment. Mr. Castillo smiled knowingly at me. I might have mentioned to my nephew, who works for the equipment rental company, that there were payment issues, he whispered. That should slow things down until tomorrow. As we approached, Karen strode toward us. You're interfering with official HOA business, she said, pointing directly at me. This is going to cost you more than you can imagine. My neighbor Sarah, who had always been too intimidated to speak up, found her voice. If anyone's interfering with anything, it's you, Karen, demolishing a protected historical site and trying to build before we can stop you. Karen's expression hardened even further. Stay out of things you don't understand, Sarah. Before she could continue, a black SUV pulled up and a distinguished older man stepped out, flanked by 2 younger associates in suits. Edward Caldwell approached, looking every inch the powerful attorney he actually was. Ms. Mitchell, he said calmly, I believe these are for you. He held out a thick envelope, official papers bearing court seals. Karen's hand trembled slightly as she took them. By order of Judge Henderson, you are to cease all construction activities immediately, pending a full investigation into permit violations, Caldwell explained. All HOA authority is temporarily suspended, and no funds may be collected or disbursed. Karen's face went through a remarkable transformation, from shock to disbelief to rage. You can't do this, she sputtered. This is our community, our development. Actually, Edward replied with quiet confidence, it's my community, as the legal owner of this land, and you, Ms. Mitchell, are trespassing on it. The color drained from Karen's face as she realized her entire power structure was collapsing. You're all going to regret this, she hissed, backing toward her car. This isn't over, Caldwell, not by a long shot. Edward watched her drive away, then turned to address the gathered residents. There's much to discuss, he said. A community meeting tomorrow morning would be appropriate. The clubhouse, I believe. 9 a.m. The next morning, every seat in the clubhouse was filled. Residents who had never attended an HOA meeting, suddenly eager to understand what was happening to their community. Edward Caldwell stood at the front of the room, no longer playing any role but fully himself, a distinguished property rights attorney with a reputation for fighting corruption. A slideshow displayed behind him showed the original plans for Lakeside Estates. I want to be clear about my intentions, he began, his voice carrying easily through the packed room. I have no desire to disrupt your lives or homes. The legal issues are with the HOA leadership, not with residents. He clicked to the next slide, revealing the original community plan. Lakeside was designed to be a balanced community with green spaces, historical preservation, and moderate-density housing. What it's become under Karen Mitchell's leadership is something very different. An overcrowded, profit-driven development that violated the core principles established in the original deeds. He explained how the HOA had systematically ignored deed restrictions, how Karen had personally profited from construction contracts, how residents had been manipulated and bullied into silence. Mrs. Jenkins raised her hand. What happens now? Does the HOA just disappear? Edward smiled slightly. The HOA structure will be dissolved and replaced with a community association that actually represents residents' interests properly. Oversight of building and maintenance will continue, but with transparent finances and democratic leadership. The most shocking revelation came when Edward revealed the financial records he'd obtained. showing how residents' HOA fees had been systematically misappropriated. Nearly 40% of all collected funds had gone to companies owned by Karen or her family members, while necessary maintenance was deferred. Mr. Castillo stood up, anger evident in his voice. We were told the pool needed $200,000 in repairs last year. Every family paid extra assessments, but the work was never done. Edward nodded grimly. The pool required approximately $30,000 in repairs, which were never completed. The remaining funds were diverted to Mitchell Construction for consulting services. A murmur of outrage spread through the room. But the biggest revelation was still to come. Edward clicked to a final slide, showing legal documents and property maps. There's one more important matter to address, he said softly. The Patterson homestead site. He explained that under the original deed restrictions, that land was designated as a community green space, with the historical home serving as a museum and community center. The illegal demolition had been the final step in Karen's plan to build luxury condominiums that would have netted her construction company millions. I propose we not only restore this site, he continued, but establish it as a memorial park with gardens and community facilities, funded by recovering the misappropriated HOA fees. His proposal was met with enthusiastic approval. After the meeting, I approached Edward, curious about one detail. Why did you let yourself be attacked that day in the park? Couldn't you have revealed yourself sooner? His expression became thoughtful. Sometimes the only way to expose deeply entrenched corruption is to experience it firsthand, he explained. I needed to understand exactly how Karen operated, how she used intimidation and fear. I needed residents to see her true nature so clearly that they could no longer deny it. As I walked home that afternoon, I noticed something had changed in our neighborhood. Children were playing on lawns that had previously been keep-off zones due to Karen's strict grass height regulations. Neighbors were chatting across property, lines that had once been tensely monitored for violations. Mr. Rodriguez was already planning a community garden in a space that had been restricted. An elderly couple was painting their front door a bright, cheerful red, something that would have resulted in immediate fines days earlier. Karen's car was gone from her driveway, a for sale sign hastily erected. Lakeside Estates was transforming before our eyes, from a community ruled by fear to one embracing its newfound freedom. Edward Caldwell had accomplished something remarkable. He had shown us that sometimes the most powerful person isn't the one with the baton or the clipboard or the power to issue fines, but the one with the patience to uncover truth and the courage to fight for justice. I remembered Edward's calm eyes as Karen struck him and understood now what I had seen there, not fear, not anger, but certainty. The quiet confidence of someone who knew that justice would eventually prevail, no matter how long it took.